Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. I hope you had a really good week this week. This week we're going to continue speaking about my experience in Mallorca. So if you listened to the previous podcast, I talked about 3 things I loved in Mallorca, but I also mentioned at the end that not everything was perfect. So I'm going into more detail today about my first experience as a digital nomad living in Mallorca. I'm going to talk about some of the high points of the experience, but also some of the things that didn't go so well, some of the challenges that I had. Okay, as always with the podcast, I'm going to give you a question to answer as you listen, and it's quite a simple one. So, what were the high points for me, and what were the low points? And for extra points, for extra marks, try to get some detail as well. So listen for some reasons that I discuss. In today's podcast, we're also going to look at phrasal verbs, and there are going to be 12 phrasal verbs that I use in the discussion today. So an extra activity is to listen out for those phrasal verbs as well. Hey, listen out, there's a phrasal verb for you. So listen out for those phrasal verbs, and I'm sure there will be some new ones for most people today. So think about the meaning of those as you hear them. And once the first recording is finished, we'll go back through and look at those in detail. Okay, so I think we're ready then. Let's get into 3 months in Mallorca, highs and lows. So it was around the beginning of October, end of September, beginning of October 2022, when I was getting ready to leave Nottingham in the UK and go to Mallorca. So the nights were beginning to draw in, the temperature was dropping. Me and my girlfriend, we were packed our bags and we moved out of our flat and started to get excited about the adventure. So I was imagining, evening swims in the Mediterranean, working from a nice cafe by the beach, and maybe going for paella, tapas, great food at the weekends. But how did it play out in reality? Did it go the way I expected? Okay, it's important for me to first discuss why I chose Mallorca, I think. So I did talk about choosing a destination in the second podcast, but I didn't really say why I chose Mallorca. So it was always a little bit of a risk, becoming a digital nomad. We didn't know how it would go for us. So we sold all of our furniture, left the flat that we'd been living in for 2 years in the UK, and packed kind of everything we owned into 2 suitcases. So the first destination was a chance to test this lifestyle and make sure we really wanted to do it long term. And Mallorca was a convenient choice because it's not far from the UK. There are a lot of flights between Mallorca and the UK. And we also planned to go home for Christmas just 3 months later. So we didn't want to go too far. It was also convenient for my girlfriend Michelle's work. She's got a good friend in Mallorca. They do the same job, so they could help each other with work. And finally, of course, it was the weather. And before we made our choice about Mallorca, I did some research and found that Mallorca has average temperatures of 23 degrees in October and 300 sunny days per year. So, that's a lot better than the UK. It's not the hottest place in Europe, but it's up there. It's pretty good. So we decided on Mallorca because of the warmth and the convenience. It was not a big risk to travel to Mallorca. And then on the 1st of October, about 11 p.m. at night, because we had a really big delay in the airport in London, we finally touched down at Palma Airport in Mallorca, and all of the planning, all of the getting ready, it was becoming real. So the high points then, what were the best things about the experience of being a digital nomad in Mallorca? So the feeling of arriving at a new destination never gets boring for me. It was about 2 a.m. when we finally got to our apartment. So we put everything down and just went to sleep. But the next morning, I opened the curtains and I could see the blue sky, the sun, and the sea, and I couldn't wait to start exploring. We went for a little walk, and just about 5 minutes down the road, came across a steep set of stairs. And at the top of those stairs, we just had an unbelievable view across, a really perfect sandy beach, crystal clear blue sea, and boats floating on the water. And yeah, I thought, wow, this is what I expected. This is what I wanted. So I ran back to the apartment. I got my swimming shorts, and we went straight down to the sea. And I just jumped in the sea and went for a swim. So I was really happy at this point, really excited. Finally, when I came down from the excitement and these happy feelings, I was floating in the sea and thinking, yeah, this is my local beach. I can do this every day. This is going to be the dream lifestyle that I expected. So that first weekend was great, a real high. We found some really nice beaches, local beaches, and places to swim. We had some good food. We chilled out in some nice cafes nearby, and it was all within walking distance of our apartment. It was exactly what I'd imagined digital nomad life in Mallorca to be like. Remember, this was October, so it's the end of the summer season, really, but it was still really sunny and warm. And for all of October, life continued like this. We finished work around 4 or 5 p.m., went down to the beach very, very often in the evening to relax. And I think one week in October, we actually went to the beach every day in the evening. So, yeah, perfect lifestyle, exactly as I imagined. At the weekends, we visited Palma, which is the biggest city in Mallorca. Did a little bit of work in small cafes, ate out at restaurants, and yeah, found more beaches. It was great. One of the real high points of the 3 months was renting a car. We actually did that 3 or 4 times during our stay, but the first time we did it, the weather was great, and I used a really, really good app called Get Around, which I recommend if you go to Mallorca. It's like Airbnb, but for cars. So you can just rent somebody's car for the day. It's cheap and really convenient. And we rented the car, drove through the countryside and the mountains, stopped at villages, discovered little beaches. And I can remember one moment we were driving back. I think we visited a village and we were driving back along the sea as the sun was setting. And I was feeling pretty good at that point. Things were going well. It was what I expected. It was the dream. But it didn't stay perfect forever. So let's get into some of the low points of the experience. And it's normal, I think. After a few weeks in one place, you do start to notice some negative things. Mallorca is a tourist location. Millions of tourists visit every year. And I read that it can be really, really crowded in summer. So October seemed the perfect time. It wasn't too busy. There were some tourists, but not loads and loads. And the weather was really, really good. But when November came, the tourists really disappeared, and a lot of the restaurants and cafes and bars began to close. So it actually became really quiet and a little bit too quiet for me. I think a lot of the locals in Mallorca probably enjoy this time because, they get some quiet time after all of the tourists go home. But as digital nomads try, only staying for a short time, that the atmosphere was a little bit too quiet and it made it difficult to meet people. And another thing, unfortunately, was the weather. And I don't want to complain about the weather all the time, but I am British, okay? It's in my blood to do this. So it was warmer than the UK in November and December, but from November, it wasn't very warm. And it wasn't really warm enough for the beach. It was also quite windy, and the wind really put me off lying on the beach. And to be honest, in Mallorca, when you take the beach away, there isn't that much to do. And I ended up working a lot more in my spare time. When you're at home, you have your hobbies, your family, and your friends to keep you busy. But in Mallorca, I didn't have that. And I found that I was spending a lot of time alone didn't have too much to do. Really, I should have kept a positive mindset, because these things shouldn't stop you from having a good time. But we were also having a lot of problems in the apartment that we rented, which was Airbnb. And it was a good place. We had everything we needed. It was very close to the beach, but the walls were very, very thin. And it turned out that our neighbor was a big gamer. So he liked video games a lot. And from November onwards, he seemed to play video games all night. So, I go to bed at the same time as a normal person, around 11, 11:30, 12. And around that time, he would start playing games. And he would, when I say all night, I mean all night. This guy would play video games all night, non-stop. When I woke up in the morning, like 7, 7:30, he was still playing. And, it's his room, so it's okay to play video games all night if that's what you want to do. But the walls of the apartment were so thin, and I could hear thing. I could hear him shouting on his headphones, and it was yeah, it was difficult. I slept so badly for those couple of months, and this affected my mood quite a lot. And to be honest, I started to hate the apartment. I couldn't wait to leave there. So the weather was not great. It became very quiet. These two things shouldn't have made it that difficult for me, but the lack of sleep due to the gaming neighbor really ruined my mood and made it pretty difficult in the last 2 months. But I think it's important to learn from the experience. As I said, it was a test for us to see if we enjoyed the digital nomad lifestyle, and we definitely learnt a lot. So looking back, I do see that I gained a lot from that first experience. And the first thing I learned was the importance of having good accommodation. So it can be quite depressing when you spend a lot of time in somewhere you hate. Particularly for me, I work from home all day, so I spend a lot of time at home. And if you really hate that environment, it's not good. So we've decided that in the future, when we choose a destination, we will increase our budget a little bit and book a bit earlier to give us a wider choice of accommodation. We've already booked the accommodation for the rest of this year, and we've spent a little bit more money on it, but they look quite good. You never really know with Airbnb until you get there, but they look quite good. So if you're spending 2 or 3 months in a location, it's worth spending a little bit more money if you can to get a better place. Another important lesson that I learned is when you travel for a long time, it's really important to keep up your hobbies. Although the weather wasn't great in Mallorca from November onwards, I could have done other things that I enjoy. I have a lot of hobbies actually, but I didn't do those things, and I ended up staying in a lot because I got myself in a really negative mindset, negative mood. I love fishing, I love hiking, and you don't need good weather to do these things, but I didn't do them, and that really affected me. So I learned from that, and I bought myself a little travel fishing rod that I can pack in my suitcase, and that's changed everything for me already. So far this year, I've been fishing in every destination that we've visited, and that's been great. I also invested in some good hiking shoes and a raincoat, so if the weather's bad, I can still get outdoors as well. The final thing that I learned, which is also really important, and I mentioned this in the second podcast when I talked about choosing a destination, is social contact. And it's really important when you travel to have social contact. Sometimes it's not easy, but it's very important. Sometimes it's nice to be on your own for a while. Certainly, I like to be on my own. I like to be on my own sometimes, but it does get lonely after a while. And it's not easy to meet people when you're only staying somewhere for a few months, but I learned that you do have to make the effort. And I have met some good people in the other destinations that we've been to since Mallorca, particularly in Taiwan. And I'll talk about that more in the future. friends and family are also coming to visit us in different destinations this year, and that helps to keep my mood up as well. So social contact is really, really important. And there's one final thing, of course, one final thing that I learned from my experience there, and it's a very, very important one. It's don't underestimate how important it is to get a good night's sleep. That changes everything, I think. Okay, so well done for listening through that one. Before the recording, I set you the question, what were the high points and what were the low points and what details could you get? And to be honest, I talked more about the low points than the high points. So the high points really were the first weekend, discovering local beaches, local restaurants, local cafes, but also the big high point, which hopefully you got, was renting a car and exploring the island in different places. The low points, there were more of these. I think we could say 3 of these. The first one was the end of the season, the end of the tourist season. So I found the atmosphere in Mallorca a little bit strange when the tourists disappeared and it became too quiet for me. The second one, and again, as I mentioned in the recording, I don't want to talk about this all the time because everyone will think all I do is complain about the weather. But the second one was the weather, and the weather changed in November. It wasn't really suitable for going to the beach. And the third low point, which hopefully you all caught this one, was the noisy neighbor. So the gamer neighbor who stopped me from sleeping well. So well done if you got that information. But I also set you the challenge to listen out for phrasal verbs in this recording. And there were 12. Some of them were really difficult. So the phrasal verbs that I used were draw in, move out, play out, touch down, come across, come down, chill out, put off, take away, end up, turn out, keep up. Okay, so some difficult ones in that list. Maybe you know some of them already, but I really hope that some of these will be new for everybody. There should be something new for everybody in there. So let's go back into the recording and look at those phrasal verbs in detail then. Here we go. So we had 3 phrasal verbs in a very short time, a very short space of time at the beginning of the recording. So let me just go through that part again. So I mentioned that I went to Mallorca, or I was getting ready to go to Mallorca at the end of September, beginning of October. So as the nights began to draw in and the temperature dropped, myself and my girlfriend packed our bags and we moved out of our flat and started to get excited about our new adventure. So I was imagining evening swims in the ocean, working at cool cafes by the beach, and eating lots of paella and tapas and good food at the weekend. But how did it play out in reality? So 3 phrasal verbs there: draw in, move out, play out. The first one, draw in, is a really specific phrasal verb. So the nights began to draw in and the temperature dropped. Draw in expresses that the night is starting to get longer as winter is coming. So when the nights draw in, it means the nights begin earlier than before. Really specific one. Draw in means the night is starting earlier, the night is getting longer, winter is coming. Draw in. The next one then, move out. So myself and my girlfriend packed our bags and moved out of our flat. So when you move out of your home, it means you leave this home and you go into another home. The opposite of move out, of course, is move in. So you move out of your old home, you leave your old home, and you move into your new home. So you start to live in your new home. That was move out. The third one in this little group is a really difficult one. So I said, I imagined swimming in the ocean in the evening, working from cool cafes by the beach and eating lots of paella, tapas and great food at the weekend. That's what I imagined. But how did it play out in reality? So play out. Okay, to keep things really simple, play out just means happen, or progress. Okay, so how did it play out in reality just means what happened in reality. Another example, I could say there's a big football match at the weekend. My team, Nottingham Forest, will play Arsenal. I hope my team, Nottingham Forest, will win, but I don't know how the game will really play out. Okay, we can use it in the future tense or the past tense, both okay. But I could say yesterday I had a really important meeting and I wanted to close a deal with my client, but it didn't play out very well and the client declined the offer. Okay, so play out, very difficult to define, but at a really simple level, it just means happen or progress. Okay, play out. Okay, the next phrasal verb was touch down. So I said that, I got my bags ready, we finished planning, and finally on the 1st of October at around 11 p.m, after a very long delay in the airport in London, we finally touched down at the airport in Mallorca. So touch down. Again, quite a specific one. Touchdown is when a plane or something that flies comes back down to the ground. Okay, it's the opposite of take off. So when a plane takes off, it goes up. When a plane touches down, it comes back onto the ground again. So we touched down at the airport in Mallorca. And then I began talking about the high points, and the first high point I mentioned was opening the curtains in the morning, seeing the blue sky, seeing the ocean. We went out to start exploring the area, and after walking for about 5 minutes, we came across a steep set of stairs, and at the top of these stairs we had an amazing view of the beach below. So we came across a steep set of stairs. Come across just means to find something or to meet something, but it's something that you didn't plan to meet or find, or you didn't expect to meet or find. So I came across a steep set of stairs. I didn't know these stairs were there before, but as I walked, I came across them, so I found them by surprise. You could come across a thing, a place, or you could come across a person as well. After I came across the steep set of stairs, then I saw the beach below and I went home quickly to get my swimming shorts, ran down to the beach and jumped into the sea. I was feeling really, really excited, full of energy at this point. And then I said, after I came down from this adrenaline rush, I floated in the ocean thinking to myself, wow, this is my local beach. I can do this every day. So I came down from the adrenaline rush. Phrasal verb here is come down, but it's important to explain adrenaline rush as well, adrenaline rush. So adrenaline is a hormone, I think, or a chemical, and when you feel very, very excited, or if you're in a very dangerous situation, you will get a lot of adrenaline in your body, and it will make you feel very awake, very aware of what's happening. So an adrenaline rush is that feeling when you get lots of adrenaline in your body and you feel very aware, very awake, maybe very excited. Okay, so I saw this amazing beach and I had an adrenaline rush. I was really, really excited. But when I came down from the adrenaline rush, I started to think, wow, this is my local beach. I can do this every day. So come down. When you come down from something, it means when a really intense feeling stops and you go back to normal. People mostly use this one when they talk about the effect of a drug. So if somebody takes a drug, they get an effect from that drug, they feel high maybe, and then when the effect disappears and they come back to normal, they come down from the effects. But you can also use come down with intense feelings as well. So maybe you have a really intense feeling of excitement, and then you come down from that feeling and you start to feel more normal again. Okay, so the first weekend was a real high point. We explored the local area, discovered a lot of nice beaches and swimming spots. We ate some great food and we chilled out in local cafes. So chill out is the phrasal verb here. I think a lot of us will know this one. So chill out just means to relax. I like to chill out on the beach at the weekend. Notice the pronunciation. If we want a really natural pronunciation here, we blend the two words, chill out. So it's more like chill out, chill out. So chill out just means to relax. After the high points, we started talking about the low points, and I discussed the end of the tourist season, and then I started talking about the weather. So I mentioned that the weather was warmer than the UK, but from November, it just wasn't really warm enough for the beach. And it was quite windy on the beach, and this really put me off going to the beach and swimming in the ocean. So the wind really put me off lying on the beach. The phrasal verb here is put off, but we notice that this is a separable phrasal verb. So we can separate the verb and the preposition. So put me off. Okay, when something puts you off, it means it makes you not want to do something. So the wind was not very pleasant, not very nice. The wind put me off lying on the beach. So because the wind was not very nice, I didn't want to lie on the beach. Okay. Another example, we use put off with food very often. So imagine as most people do these days, you're watching something on your phone while you're eating your dinner, and maybe you're watching a scary movie and you see something very disgusting on this movie. And when you see this, you don't want to eat anymore. So the movie put you off your food, put you off eating. And we have more phrasal verbs in this section as well. So I said, when you take the beach away, there really wasn't so much to do. And I ended up working a lot more in my spare time. So two phrasal verbs here, take away and end up. Okay, so when you take the beach away, there wasn't so much to do. Take away just means remove, remove. So for example, when you take a toy away from a baby, the baby will cry. And again, we notice that take away can be separated. Okay, so when you take the beach away, there wasn't very much to do, and I ended up working more in my spare time. I think this is quite a difficult one, end up, but it's a really common one in spoken English. So end up is the final state or the final result of other situations, okay? So because the weather wasn't good and I didn't have a lot to do, the result of that was that I worked more. So there wasn't much to do, so I ended up working more. The result was that I was working more. So end up expresses the final state or the result of another situation. I could say, for example, I planned to go hiking last weekend, but the rain was really heavy, so I ended up watching a movie instead. Okay, you could say, if you study very hard at university, you will end up in your perfect job. Something like that. Maybe it's not always true, but we can hope. Another one then, so moving on, I started to talk about the neighbor, the gaming neighbor, and I used a phrasal verb that is very similar to end up here. So I mentioned that the walls in our apartment were very thin and we could hear everything that was happening in the apartment next to us. and it turned out that our neighbor liked video games. Okay, it turned out that our neighbor liked video games. So again, turn out can express like a result, but we often use turn out to express that the result is maybe a little bit of a surprise. Okay, so I didn't expect to have a noisy neighbor, but it turned out that I did have a noisy neighbor. We could use turn out with, I don't know, in many situations when we want to express a result, and maybe a surprising result. So let's say yesterday I tried to bake a cake, but it turned out really badly. Okay, so the cake, the final cake was not very good. The result of the cake was not very good. I could say, for example, to use another football example, my team, Nottingham Forest, played Arsenal at the weekend. Nobody expected Nottingham Forest to win, but it turned out that we were the better team and we won the game. Okay, so turn out can express a result, and often we use it to express a surprising result. So after the high points and the low points, I discussed some of the things that I learned about, I learned from the experience. And one of the main things was that it's really important to keep up your hobbies while you're traveling long term. So keep up is the phrasal verb here. It's important to keep up your hobbies. Keep up means to maintain or to continue doing. Okay, so to keep up your hobbies means to continue doing your hobbies, maintain them. We could say, well, very often actually, we use this one with regards to health and fitness. So it's very important to keep up your fitness so that you feel good, so that you feel healthy. I actually used some of those phrasal verbs 2 or 3 times, guys. So if you want to listen to them in context again, I suggest listening to the podcast again, or of course, checking out the blog at eng2.com, so eng-tu.com. And you can look at these phrasal verbs in context, in a text, in a reading article, and then you can practice using them with the exercises as well. Well done, a difficult one today, but really useful phrasal verbs. I hope everybody learned something from the podcast today and you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.